I'm rolling right into part two because it always, as I've actually had a vision that I was being called out for this is what am I saying? New Earth strategies. Day two, part two. I've had visions in dreams, visions just in my imagination. And I'm a hippie, so I've done psychedelics and other things. But I reached my visioning before I did any of those drugs. I described it as it was a senior in prep school, Phillips Andover. Took a week of, it took like a whole fall semester of nihilistic deconstruction of values to where all I was left with was my own perception. It's like all I can say is that I'm here to look at all this and wonder what the F. That's the only actual thing I could really say. Everything else was like my body. Where'd that come from? I was trying to be objective, materialite if you want, but I wanted serious proof. Um, what ended up happening was that I had to either like say, well, there is no answer, or I have to go with my subjective understanding because that's all there really was. And I centered into that, and I ended up having some visions, and that was before I did any drugs. But actually, in the process of getting to that vision, I was psychic for a minute, for a whole day, and I was reaching these energies, which really, really clean LSD. I only tried that once. Somebody had a special vault, saving it up for weirdos like me that showed up. It was somebody mentioning the electric Kool-Aid acid test. When I finally got to Santa Fe in 1990, he heard some of my crazy rap. Said, "Hey man, maybe you should test some of this." And it was some Owsley. Took it out of a refrigerated vault, and it was pretty much the same feeling as a week's worth of meditating and fasting, and in which I was so peaceful I did not need sleep. I just sort of just didn't need it, and the whole world was like a magical place, and I had some vision. And then there was well, the first part of that was that the cornerstone of the material plane is a three-sided paradox, and this was an actual structural thing that happened out of the what the physicists call the quantum background, whatever, burbles. I call it burbles. I know they don't use that word. Where it's constantly, they tried to create vacuums, and they can't do it. Positron electron pairs, those are names they give to an energy force that separates and goes back out. Like it was never there. But it pops in out of nowhere. A positive and a negative something. What does positive negative means? This and the other that. This and that. Gone. Now I saw that at one point it went 3. And then instead of coming back, if 2 come back sooner, it's a repel. I mean, compared to 0 and different aspects of reality. Oh my God. So it spins instead of come back. 2 of these come back. And if they're not all there at the same time, they disappear back out. 2 of them are off balance because the third one needed to be so it spins, and that becomes a permanent structure. And the otherwise quantum burbles. Now you have a bubble, an actual bubble, energetically, not like a bubble in the water. It's an energetic capturing of a space, and that gets inhabited, and it gets inhabited by a feminine energy, a feminine being. You can't be there. Beingness is an energy, but to actually be you have to capture it. That becomes someone, and the energy uncaptured, maybe that's physics. I don't know. Different things we don't know, but I have a vision that that's the first being, and she goes through the phase of inward bliss, warming up, and then she awakens and releases that bliss. But then there's a deep endless moment of infinity, because that's what all these moments are, but they go by. Get another one where she was alone. How much does she know who she is? I don't know. These are all primal energies. But the presencing of first, it's bliss and vibrational. You get to that same place in your own head. If you remove everything else and just get inward, you can get to bliss, vibrational bliss. And she looks out and there's nothing. So and it turns into dissipation, cold. Yeah, there's warmth also. Fear. Panic, loneliness. That's the energy that needed to get thrown in the mix to create a big bang. You're not just a bored God. I'm bored. Let's create. See, there's discrepancies if you just take each one of the three perspectives by themselves. But the first energy was bliss. The second energy released as panic when she finally had enough. Because if we're there, there's a kind of attention span thing or whatever capacity to feel. And now her attention is something else. See, what's that? What's attention? Attention is what an individual does. That's a masculine thing, though, to narrow and focus your perspective. Anyway, she's turned back inward, but her two energies have been released. And when the panic wave, which moves faster than the bliss wave, passes through it, it creates a ripple of more energies. And those, in this vision I had in my senior year, I took 3 months of fall term, and then over the winter I had the rest of it. Did that last week and got these two visions. One of them was Cornstorm and Tour Planes, the three-sided paradox, and the other one includes some of what I'm talking about now, some of this. But this is a little loose version of it because I want to get to what it means and how it brings back together what we need to do and stop fearing each other's perspectives. But the panic wave pushing through the bliss wave created, let's say, a ring. It's more of a spiral, and it goes away. But four-sided paradoxical structures. I don't know why. 44 four-sided paradoxical structures. Up to this point, there was a certain logic of coming into being, but the 44 comes out of nowhere. It's just like, that feels like a memory. And so, but they start waking up. And the 44 is because they're vectored, the four-sidedness, they're vertically vectored towards the center because it's her energy that created it. The fact that they're vectored makes all these masculine, even though they still go through their first initial being, coming into being, which is a feminine energy, receptive, and then they wake up. And here's what's going on. So they're twins, masculine twins in this four-sided structure. Twins born looking in, twins born looking out. They start waking up from one point, then they open up like that, sequentially. And then the outer twins. But the first one is born twin looking in, bliss, 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 warmth. And instead of emptiness, there's a feminine being. But she's already in her third phase of reality. And I saw it as Princess Dragon. Yeah, I have a perspective on having been there as one of these inner twins. So then the first twin just gets more like, first it's like, wow, because feminine masculine has an attraction and a thing, a fascination and some kind of thing. Let's not get there because you don't want to ruin that one. Oh, there's just the reality of it. The feminine feeling and the masculine wanting to help her not be hurting so much. And he couldn't do anything because her energy was stronger. He's pinned back. He's receptive, but he's masculine. He's focused. Until that vibrates, he's like, oh my God, it's nothing I can do. So now I go to the twins born looking out. And meanwhile, other twin born looking in are doing a wake. 11 of them wake up by the time the next phase. But the next phase, twin born looking out. Now he's got all that to his back. And you don't have a way to turn your head and look around. So if you're looking in, I guess you can more or less see the inward thing. But if you're looking out, it's all behind you. So he wakes up from bliss, warmth, and it's just him. He sees nobody else, nothing else. But it's not empty, and it stays warm because he's being warm from behind. And energy's rushing past him. So it looks like he's projecting that energy. And let's say, he's projecting it. I guess if his contour could disturb it. So he's fascinated with the energy being projected. It takes a while to go from like bliss of waking up to the fear of being alone. And he's not ever gets colder, he doesn't. And plus things are happening. So next thing he knows, his twin born looking in behind him is agitated. He turns around to see what that was, not knowing, as if to scratch himself. And turns around and he sees her. And it's a feminine being. And the first impulse is lust. And before he even thinks about it, he's already projecting out. And as I say, these are primal entities, but they're beings. I don't know what. I'm sure there's no words attached to any of this. And it's a gut feeling. You have to think about it. So he leaps into her space. He leaves we know you could leave the structure that created us? Well, once you have an inward focus, that's who you are now. You don't need anything out there. Your single point of singularity of consciousness. It's an inwardness. Inward all the way back to the one mind. But the one mind by itself can't do anything. You got to extrude and then reconnect out there. What they call differentiating so we can see ourselves. Anyway, that one who first one to turn around, that's Jehovah. He leaks into her space. Boom! That's not going to last. Infinite being inside, she's still inside her three-sided paradox. So that's the smallest possible space. Boom! Big bang. He, I guess, gets blown out, so he's still outside of it. All of us are. And she's still within it somehow. So maybe that's how you have Mother Earth and Father Sky. Gravity, who knows what these forces are, but they all come from beingness. I'm saying gravity, electricity, these are all names we give to forces that happen from the reality of what it takes to be here. And that's the logic that makes it make sense. And you know it by having been, coming into being yourself. But you have to stop pointing fingers at yourself like, oh, you're not good enough for these authorities or those authorities. Anyway, though, 11 more inner twins wake up and watch this whole thing. But 7 more outer twins also woke up and tried to follow Jehovah in. But by the time they got there, they got bounced. I'm saying maybe Allah is one of those guys. Get into that. But okay, so 11 inner twins woke up. Meanwhile, the other 33 sets of twins woke up with the big flash. And Jehovah jumped in consciously where she was turned in and didn't know. And it suddenly was like, I'm not alone. Big relief. For a minute, it looked like he thought and he probably did for a minute think he made all that. But the minute he was actually there, he's bigger than all that. But everybody's still caught with inside of this. Like the whole 66 twins that woke up, call them the hierarchy of light. Because they all got word that they just woke up and, hey, I woke you up, blah, blah, blah. That's the energy that was there. And they look and it's like a masculine projecting of light and consciousness. The feminine parts, inward and receptive and appreciative. It's the energy of appreciation. But the motivation was, she was feeling pain, man. And that was the big bang. Whoosh! Total fear of complete nihilistic emptiness. Totally relieved by complete fullness and touch and holding, and warmth of bliss renewed. So that's how that comes together. And now Jehovah is the kind of director, but we all come from the source of oneness. And so in the material plane came from the Big Bang, and there was a period of physics, which I guess was intrinsic livity from within. And then there was a period where it was, there's consciousness looking at all this and perceiving it. So there's the inner twins that saw this, the 11 inner twins. I'm the only one that's ever called this anything. I call it the Dark Brotherhood of Compassion. And dark because it's hidden. But also we're not afraid of the dark. But it's not dark in evil. And it's dark because it bounces the light. Dark because it's about understanding how people clash with the hierarchy. People clash with the hierarchy because they have their own intrinsic sense of knowingness. But there's ways to get it wrong. And then the material universe is a particular way. And it has some of the imprint of the personalities of Jehovah and Sophia. But nevertheless, it has its own livity and expanding the geometry of how life happens. So you have to get real to that. And it takes all of this sequence to get to a place. Earth is special in time, not in any other way. And it's possible to see. There's a consciousness beyond all of this. And it's on 2 levels. There's the oneness, the